Everybody's bright and perky. Well, welcome. A few more people coming in here. Welcome to session IMB 293, which is the session where we're going to cover some of the integrations between the Citrix XenApp Zen Desktop product suite and Microsoft System Center. My name is Patrick Carey. I'm on the product management team for XenApp and Zen Desktop. I'll be joined today by Prasanna Padmanabhan in our Microsoft Solutions Development Group and Bogdan Veer of Comtrade. So we're going to give you some overviews and demonstrations, particularly around Configuration Manager and Operations Manager. But I want to set some context for how these integrations are important in your environment. So with desktop and application virtualization, it's not simply a matter of taking stuff off of local PCs and shoving it into the data center. As you do this, you have to move to a mindset of an actual service delivery. And in doing that, you need to be thinking holistically about your strategy for making those applications and desktops available. So that means you need to think about end-to-end systems management, not just around the desktops themselves, but about the underlying infrastructure and managing across your traditional desktops that are in your environment, as well as the new virtualized desktops and applications. You also need to be thinking about security and data protection, because now all those desktops are going to be not just physically bound on a single device, but they're going to be accessed over the network. You need to be thinking about how your users need to access those applications and desktops, on-premise, from home, from alternative sites, on the road, providing means to access that from a wide variety of locations. And since you're consolidating desktops and apps now into a data center or a handful of data centers, business continuity becomes important, because when you have an outage, it's no longer just one person's PC that breaks and affects them. You have the possibility that an outage could affect a large portion of your organization. And though you also need to be thinking about the way users want to access IT facilities now. We're in a highly consumerized market now with all of the mobile devices and the application stores. And increasingly, the workforce is expecting to be able to self-provision applications and services without having to go through a lengthy exchange with IT in order to provision those. Now, fortunately, Citrix and Microsoft, our solutions together, can help you develop that end-to-end strategy across all those different domains. And we're going to talk about some of those key areas today. Now, Citrix and Microsoft both bring some complementary strengths to the table. Obviously, Microsoft is the de facto market leader for desktop, traditional desktops, great hypervisor platform for hosting VDI. Citrix has been doing virtualized application delivery and virtualized desktop delivery for almost our entire existence. And we're working together to make OS virtualization, application virtualization, and user state virtualization easier to adopt, easier to deploy, and easier to manage. System Center 2012, when it was released last year, really marked a watershed event, we think, for System Center. If you haven't migrated up to the 2012 or SP1, I think you'll find things are substantially improved for your environment. And particularly, Configuration Manager now adopts a true user-centric model. It puts the end users at the center of the IT universe and empowers them by giving them a self-service IT platform, enabling users to use their own devices better in the enterprise. It supports a mobile workforce and is generally more in line with the overall consumerized IT environment. So let's start with Zen Desktop in some of the areas that we have some integration that we've worked on with Microsoft. The first one here is we collaborated with the configuration manager team to add specific attributes that you can use to tailor your policies and compliance monitoring reports to virtual desktops. The column on the right are the ones that are specific to Citrix. The ones on the left are vendor general. So the ones on the right, what you have here are attributes that will help you categorize desktops and identify which Zen Desktop site they're in, which catalog of machines that you've defined in Zen Desktop a particular machine belongs to. The desktop group tells you what user group that you've allocated to that desktop catalog. You can also see whether or not the desktop has in fact been assigned to a user. Is it a virtual machine or a physical desktop? So in Zen Desktop, you have the ability to manage remote access to physical PCs. It's this remote PC capability that we've added to the product. So you can tell whether or not what you're looking at are virtual desktops or traditional physical machines. OS changes persist. Some of you may be familiar with our provisioning services and machine creation services technologies. What those do is they allow you to manage and run multiple machines off of a single shared image at runtime. So if you think about Zen App Farms or even virtual desktop catalogs, all those machines, you generally want them to be more or less identical. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to have to individually provision OS images for each of those machines. And so what machine creation services and provisioning services do is instead you manage a single instance of your base OS disk, and then the machines access that in runtime. They're literally pulling the blocks as needed off of a single disk image. So that's important, and we'll get into that in a little more depth here. It has some implications for how you manage those machines and that image. This OS changes persist flag helps you identify which machines are operating in that shared image mode versus having their own their own OS image that you can patch directly. And then the last two attributes give you some data as to where, for these shared image machines, the persistent data that those machines are saving is located. So you can use these when creating patch and OS deployment groups for compliance reporting, for inventory management as well. Those are part of the current Zen Desktop 5.6 and System Center 2012 and 2012 SP1. If you're using provisioning services or machine creation services, and those of you who may have used it in the past with System Center may have run into an issue where all of the machines built off that same image, we had a bit of a problem reporting them uniquely with System Center because the disk image had the GUID baked into it, and so when the machines all ran, they all looked the same. We worked with Microsoft to address that problem. So even though you're managing these machines from a single shared image, they'll each uniquely configure a GUID and persist that GUID across reboots so that they will report correctly within Configuration Manager. The other thing that got added into 2012 was the ability to specifically configure the agent to optionally do the patch download and apply patches or not. So again, if you're running a shared image environment, the only time you want your OS and application updates to be deployed is when you're targeting them to the machine that's going to be updating that shared disk image. All of the machines that are cloned off of that, they reset when we reboot them. So anything that happens in that session gets blown away. And that's actually an important value for that, in that you can reset an environment to a known good, clean state just by rebooting the machines. But what you don't want to be doing is rolling out applications to them, because you're going to be consuming resources. let's plug on the best we can. So this attribute allows you to tailor the agent so that it will it'll do all the functions it normally does in terms of inventory reporting and compliance reporting, but it will not download the updates to those machines that are running. So the idea is that you configure this to disable it on the cloned machines, but the machine that you're using as the master VM to patch the shared image will have this flag turned off. Now, we make use of this inside of provisioning services as part of the image update feature. So the way that works is you define a VM that's your master VM. It's the machine that's going to patch that shared base image. So it allows the configuration manager admin to target an update to that master VM that will be allocated to that image. So the admin doesn't have to think about how that gets deployed. They're just treating that like any other machine. So then there's a process that runs periodically that will spin up the master VM, create a new version of that shared image. That'll load our client as well as the SCCM agent. And then we'll send a signal to cause that agent to start its update process. So then it does what the agent does, which is to download the targeted patch and apply them in the running VM, which means they'll get saved in the new version of that virtual disk. Now that new version is available for your environment, and through the provisioning services console, you can mark that as being ready to go to production, reboot your machines, and they'll take on that new version. So these features have been in the product here for a few months. We're going to move forward here to the updates to the connector between XenApp and System Center 2012 Configuration Manager. Now, the XenApp connector was first introduced in 2010 as Project Titan. We updated it in 2011 for our XenApp 6.5 release. And what the connector originally was focused on was orchestrating updates to your XenApp farm so that you could target your OS and application updates to the farm, and then the connector would do a graceful rolling upgrade of the farm itself. This past year, we've updated the connector in Project Thor. And last month, that went into general availability as the XenApp connector for XenApp 6.5 and System Center 2012 and 2012 SP1. So what Thor does is it adds the ability to use the new application deployment types that are in Configuration Manager 2012. And so this now allows the SCCM admin to expand their reach significantly. So whereas Configuration Manager, thanks to all of you who tried to cover the speakers. All right. So traditionally, Configuration Manager is used to manage Windows devices, so Windows desktops, laptops, servers, Windows phones, and manage users that are within the traditional IT periphery, so inside the active domain environment. But with XenApp and the XenApp connector and Citrix receiver, from that same System Center console, the Configuration Manager admin now has reach to virtually every device that's in the market. So we expand and allow you to manage application deployment to iOS, to Linux, to Android, pretty much any device that it's out there. We have a wide footprint with Citrix Receiver as an application endpoint. And also instantly be able to, through XenApp, access users regardless of whether they're on-premise, on the road, working from home, on or off the domain. That's what XenApp does. And the connector now allows you to seamlessly use it to deploy apps from the SCCM console. So the SCCM admin doesn't have to be the quote-unquote Citrix guy. They don't have to understand how the XenApp works. They can just simply use that as another way to deploy applications. So it allows you to unify your management environment. You don't need a separate Citrix process and a traditional app process. You can unify all of that, blending the XenApp deployment type along with MSI and CAB and AppV. It allows you to extend the reach, as I'd mentioned, to all these other devices. It still manages the rolling upgrade and the graceful update of the XenApp farm so that you can ensure, again, with that service delivery mindset, that you want to keep those servers up as much as possible to limit downtime. And the connector still does that and does it very well. And again, it allows you to do this with the tools that you already have in your environment. So there's no training, to train new admins or people that are used to managing the environment with Configuration Manager on a new set of tools. You get to leverage those processes and those skills. So again, if you haven't looked at the new Configuration Manager 2012, there's a lot of new stuff in there. For the XenApp connector, we're focused on 3 of these features: deployment types, the user-centric administration, and the application catalog. And these features help you answer this question: how am I going to deliver a particular application to a particular user, and not just how am I going to do it on their Office PC, but how am I going to do it regardless of where they're trying to access the application from and what device they're on. So to go into that in more depth, I'm going to hand over to Prasanna Padmanabhan, and he's going to dig into this, explain it, and give you a demonstration of how it works.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. So as Patrick was saying, there are basically these 3 new concepts in SCCM that matter to Citrix administrators, right, and SCCM administrators: deployment types, user-centric administration, and the application catalog. So let's first look at deployment types and user-centric administration. Okay. So the goal of the SCCM admin, like Patrick said, is to figure out how to deliver this application, in this case Adobe Reader, to a user, Tony, to an employee. Now, the admin has a choice of deployment types that come out of the box with SCCM 2012. You guys know this. There's the AppV deployment type. There's traditional MSIs. There's the mobile CAB files. So what Citrix has done with the XenApp connector for SCCM is extend the deployment type model to add XenApp as a first-class citizen, as a new deployment type in the Config Manager console. So the question is, how do you choose the best deployment type for a given deployment? Well, it could be based on the user's hardware environment. So you could say, for example, depending on whether it's a laptop or a desktop that the user is coming from, you can decide on what deployment type to use. It could be based on number of CPUs, how much disk space is still left, how much is a 32-bit or 64-bit operating system, and so on and so forth. Or it could be based on software conditions, such as the locale of the operating system. You can even go as deep as looking for a certain registry key, or maybe running a script to see if it's a sort of a corporate compliant device. So basically, using these conditions, the administrator can get very creative now in choosing the best deployment type for the user that not just gives the user the best user experience, but also makes sure that it's still within the corporate compliance framework. So the admin can, for example, he can say, if Tony is coming from a secure corporate laptop that doesn't have a lot of RAM on it, for example, then deliver the application, then deliver Adobe using XenApp, because after all, it's a sort of a thin client model. It virtually consumes no resources on the client. Or you could say, if it's a secure corporate laptop, but there's a reasonable amount of disk space that's still free, maybe AppV is your best choice. As you know, Microsoft has done a lot of heuristics to determine the device that the user uses most frequently. That's called the primary device. So the admin can say, if using the primary device, then deliver using MSI. Right? So they can get very flexible and creative to make sure the user gets a good user experience. So that's a concept of deployment types and user-centric administration. The third new concept is the SCCM app catalog. As you guys know by now, the app catalog is basically a self-service portal for application subscription. So how does this fit in the Citrix context? Well, when you select an application, when the user picks an application from the software catalog and hits install, the app gets deployed, yes. But the most appropriate deployment type is chosen based on the user's environment, like I explained on the previous slide. Subscriptions are static to a user device pair, so they don't roam. So just because you get XenApp on one device doesn't mean you get XenApp on another device. It basically depends on those rules, like I mentioned before. But here's the most important. Applications that have the XenApp deployment type are handled through the Citrix connector plugin. So if it turns out that XenApp is the best DT for, let's say this machine, and the user deployed Adobe and then hit install, it adds an icon in the start menu for Adobe, and obviously when you click on it, it would use Citrix Receiver to talk back to your backend XenApp farm. We'll look at that in the demo. So deploying applications using the connector is actually a very simple administrative process. There are 3 easy steps for administration. First step is for the admin to create the application in the config manager console. The second step is to define sort of a base deployment type for it. Could be either an MSI or an AppV, and then deploy that application to your XenApp farm collection using one of these 2 deployment types as a required deployment. The application needs to get installed on your XenApp server. So create an application, define one of these 2 deployment types, and target the app towards your XenApp farm. The third step is to deploy the application to your users using the XenApp deployment type. Okay? So 3 easy steps to administration. We'll look at this in the demo in more detail. Okay. AppV is an important use case for Citrix. Let's understand why. So why AppV for XenApp? AppV gives you the benefit of single image management. So you can basically have one base image. Even if you have, let's say, 100 XenApp servers in your farm, you could have one base image that has your basic productivity applications that most users use, and then layer cake applications using AppV on the XenApp server at runtime. So huge benefits there. As you know, AppV overcomes application compatibility problems. So applications that normally don't run together on a machine can work just fine with AppV because every AppV application is sort of running in its own sandbox. So for example, Outlook 2007 and Outlook 2010, good examples of that. So Citrix supports publishing both AppV 4.6 and AppV5 applications that was added in SCCM SP1 from a XenApp standpoint. So how does the XenApp connector operate in an AppV environment? 2 steps. First step is for the admin to target an AppV-based deployment type to the XenApp farm. And then as a second step, deploy that to users that could come from any kind of device, even non-Windows devices. I'll be showing a demo of an iPad. But the application is running on the XenApp farm as an AppV-based application, but you can access it using XenApp on any kind of device that wouldn't even support AppV, like an iPad. Okay. So let's look at the application deployment workflow, so how it works end-to-end, and how the architecture looks like. So the fundamental goal is for the SCCM admin to deploy, let's say, Adobe here, that's sitting on the distribution point, all the way to Tony, who's the end user, who's using his secure corporate laptop, for example. So the admin basically goes through that 3-step process that I explained on the previous slide. And then optionally, you could specify a rule saying, when Tony is using his primary PC, which could be a big, beefy desktop, for example, deliver Adobe using MSI. If he's not using his primary device, use XenApp. Okay. So what we have is a plugin extension to the SCCM console that you can use to create your XenApp deployment type attributes and parameters. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, as soon as this happens, we have an SCCM, a Citrix SCCM agent that runs on all the XenApps. So this is something that you need to deploy on all your XenApp servers. As Patrick was mentioning, he was talking about the new idle policy mode that was introduced in SCCM 2012. So the SCCM agents that are on the XenApp servers are running in this idle policy mode. So they basically relinquished software distribution unless a third-party agent, in this case Citrix, tells it to do app deployments. So we take advantage of that by making sure that the deployment happens only when there are no users logged in, only when we're within a maintenance window, and only obviously when we have something to install. We optionally take advantage of the Citrix PCM server, stands for Power and Capacity Management, and this is the piece that does the graceful, this is the piece that adds the graceful orchestration. So what PCM does is it makes sure that even when you're within the maintenance window, you don't want all your servers to reboot at the same time, because that's going to cause downtime. For example, in sort of the mission critical applications like healthcare, you don't want all servers in the farm going down even for a minute. So the PCM piece will ensure that there are at least some servers that are up and running when maintenance is going on all the other servers. So it does it very intelligently. But PCM is an optional component, by the way. If you have set SLAs and if you want to take care of the orchestration yourselves, for example, if you send out a broad email saying between 4 and 5 on Sunday morning your XenApp farm is going to be down, you probably don't need PCM. So that's step number 2. SCCM agent orchestrates app installation on all the XenApp servers. This could take hours or days or even weeks, depending on how you have your maintenance windows configured. Okay. So although the app is now installed on all the XenApp servers, it's not available to the user yet, because there's still a key piece missing, and that's step number 3. That's the publishing piece. Okay. So the XenApp connector performs the publishing of the application to Tony. Publishing and deployment are 2 different things. Step 2 was deployment. Step 3 is publishing. So publishing basically adds an entry in the database, associating the app with the user and the server that it just got deployed to. So publishing always happens after deployment. So we make sure that the app is first installed before we go ahead and publish it on that server. So that's basically all the workflow that happens within the data center. At this point, the application is ready for Tony to access using any kind of device. So let's say Tony goes into a conference room and he says, I need to read a PDF document at the kiosk PC in the conference room. So he opens up the application catalog and makes a subscription for the application. So what happens at that point is SCCM figures out what's the best deployment type to use. Because it's not his primary PC, it comes to a conclusion that XenApp is the most preferred deployment type. And at that point, it invokes the Citrix client handler, Citrix XenApp client handler. And it says, OK, Citrix, go and handle the application deployment. Once we are in control, we make a call to Citrix receiver, which actually does the subscription on behalf of the user. And at that point, the application gets delivered to the user start menu. And like I said, when you click on it, it's going to use XenApp. The application it looks and feels as if it's running remotely, but it's actually running on the data center. Okay, the classic XenApp proposition. So this is the end-to-end app deployment workflow. By the way, the connector supports multiple farms. So you could have, let's say, a pilot farm and a production farm, and you can manage both multiple farms using using one SCCM console. Okay, so Patrick spoke a lot about PBS. I want to explain how the connector works in the PBS context. It's more or less the same, but there's a key difference. The difference is, as you know, in the PBS context, you don't target applications and updates to all your servers in the farm. You only target that to the master image, the master vdisk. So step number 1, the PBS master image is updated with your apps and updates. Okay. and you mark that image as the production image. But at the same time, the XenApp clone workers, remember, they're still running the old image at this point. But as soon as an image is marked as a production image, the workers basically get a notification that their image is out of date. A dirty bit, literally a dirty flag is set in the registry, and that's the clue that it's running an old image, and it needs to update its image. So what happens is, remember the graceful orchestration process that I spoke about before? That graceful orchestration process kicks in. The servers start rebooting, and again, this only happens within the maintenance window when there are no users logged in. As soon as the clone workers reboot, they stream the new image from PBS, and now they have the most up-to-date image running on all of them. Again, this process could take days, hours, maybe even weeks, depending on how you have things configured. So at this point, all these clone workers have the new apps and operating system updates that was targeted at this guy, but it's not available to the user yet. Again, the key piece is the publishing that happens after that. The publishing takes all these applications that were pushed to the master read disk, publishes them, makes it available to the user, and the same workflow happens on the user side that I showed on the previous slide. Okay, user uses the app catalog, SCCM figures out that XenApp is the best deployment type, and then it invokes the handler, which in turn talks to the receiver to make the subscription. So any questions before we look at a demo? Maybe we can have one or two quick questions. What time is it? Yeah. Go ahead.
Basically, I'm just curious. So if the user makes a subscription on a device type, does that subscription stay persistent if they float between devices of the same device type? Or do they have to make a subscription on every device?
Oh, so if they subscribe to an application on one device, and when they go to another device, is it going to show up? The answer is no, and that's because on another device, if it's of the same device type, SCCM still needs to figure out what the best deployment type is. So every time a user subscribes to an application using the catalog, it runs the policy evaluation and figures out what the best deployment type is. So your subscriptions don't roam from device to device. 90% of the time, admins basically deploy the application as a mandatory application. So it shows up in the start menu as soon as you. That's something I forgot to mention. So subscription is one way of accessing the application. We also support mandatory push, which is, like I said, the big use case. What happens at that point is, as soon as you log in to your desktop, the application shows up in the start menu. All right, so let's look at. So before we jump into the demo, I want to show you what it is that I'm going to be showing in the demo, so you kind of get the 30,000-foot view first. So I'll be showing the config manager console, where I have a couple of applications configured. I have Excel 2013 configured with AppV and XenApp deployment types, and Adobe configured with MSI and a XenApp deployment type. Now on the user side, I'll be showing the experience on the user's primary device, which is a big beefy desktop. We'll look at the experience on the big beefy desktop. There are enough resources, so the user is basically going to get AppV for. We'll set rules such that he gets AppV for Excel and MSI for Adobe. And then as the user moves to a sort of a company laptop, the secure corporate laptop example that I was giving before, he's going to get the same application but using XenApp. And then if possible, I can even show you an iPad where the user is going to be using Citrix receiver to access the application. All right. So let's see. First, let's go to our big beefy desktop. Actually, first let's look at the admin experience. So let me minimize this. Okay. So that's the SCCM console. I have installed the Citrix XenApp connector plugin, so you'll see the Citrix specific semantics that show up. For example, here, the list of all your XenApp publication shows up here. But let's go through that three-step process that I was explaining before to actually deploy an application. I have some applications configured here. Let's take PowerPoint here. Okay, so I have Microsoft PowerPoint 2013, which is an AppV5 based application. I've already created the AppV deployment type. So now I'll go ahead and deploy the application to the XenApp farm. So remember, we've completed step 1. Now we're looking at step 2, which is to deploy the application to your XenApp farm. So right-click, deploy. I go to device collections. And as you can see, the connector has actually figured out what your XenApp farm structure looks like, and it has imported it into SCCM as a device collection, so you don't have to worry about it. If you add new servers to your XenApp farm, it automatically updates the collection. By default, the synchronization task runs every 10 minutes. In this case, being a small demo environment, I just have one server in the farm, and this is the name of the farm and also the name of the worker group. Next. So I'm setting a distribution point. Now, I need to set the purpose field to required because the application is absolutely required on the XenApp server. So I set that to required. We'll leave these as default. In this example, I don't have a maintenance window configured, so it's going to deploy the application right away. When I say right away, it could mean a few minutes. So we've completed step 2. We have created the AppV deployment type, and we have deployed the application to the XenApp farm. Now we're going to step 3. Remember, step 3 is to create the XenApp deployment type and deploy the application to users. So right-click, create deployment type. Now I choose Citrix XenApp 6.5. So this is the, you can see XenApp is now a sort of first-class citizen in the config manager console. So we select, let's see, let me do this. Oops, hold on. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where the mouse is. Okay. Okay, so next. Give a name and description. Okay, we'll leave that as default. Here's where I add individual publishings. These are the actual EXEs. So here, if you're a XenApp administrator, this wizard should look familiar to you because this is pretty much the same as what you would see in the App Center wizard in XenApp. Next, it's an AppV5 virtual application. That's the base deployment type. So hit next. So we open up the AppV package because we know that there's an AppV deployment type for it, and we figure out what are all the applications that are within that package. In this case, there's only PowerPoint. But if, let's say the AppV package was a big package for Office, obviously this drop-down list would show you, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, so on and so forth. This is the package GUID and version GUID for AppV5. Obviously, these are read-only. We extract the icon. This is the icon that the end user would see when they subscribe to the application or when it gets pushed to their start menu. You can also optionally specify a folder that you want the app to show up in on their start menu. So you can say Microsoft Office 2013 or something like that. Next. You can configure advanced settings, such as Access Gateway. If you're using Citrix Access Gateway, you can specify filter criteria. You can specify file type associations. So you can say, for example, I want all PowerPoint PPTX files to launch using the Citrix version of PowerPoint. You can set application importance, client options. We'll leave that as default. Hit finish. Next. Next. So this basically completes step 2 in our step 3A, I would say, because we still haven't deployed the application to users. So let me go ahead and do that. So I right-click on PowerPoint, and I say deploy. And now I need to deploy that to my end users. So in this case, I'll say all users and groups, next, next. I'll mark it as available, so it's available in the application catalog for subscription. Next, next, next. Leave those as default. Settings look good. Finish. And that's it. That's all you need to do on the administrator side. Now let's look at the user experience on a big beefy desktop, which is the user's primary device. By the way, the code name for this project is Thor, so that's why you have the Thor wallpaper. But I'm going to open up the app catalog on my big beefy desktop. Let me make sure I don't have any of the Office applications installed here. So yeah, that's good. So I don't have Office installed, so that's good. So let me go to, should be in my favorite list, I think, or the app catalog. Let's see. Yeah, here, there it is, Config Manager App Catalog. Now I remember this is the primary device. I just deployed PowerPoint, so it's probably still going through that workflow. So let me use Excel as an example because, by the way, I configured Excel the exact same way I configured PowerPoint, but I did that a few hours ago. So in typical cooking show style, we'll use Excel. Choose Excel. Obviously, Citrix doesn't get involved here because we set the rules such that the user's primary device gets AppV. So right now it's deploying the AppV-based application. Let's go to the secure corporate laptop meanwhile. We'll come back, big beefy desktop, and see how things were going there. So this is my big beefy, this is my secure corporate laptop. And again, let me make sure that I don't have Office pre-installed. No, I don't. So I go to, let's see. Okay, so I go to the application catalog the exact same way I did on the big beefy desktop. Remind me later. And now I'm going to choose Excel and hit install. Exact same user experience. Let's go back to that big beefy desktop and see how things are going there. So on the big beefy desktop, it says application has been successfully installed. Let's see if I go to all programs. Yeah, there it is, Office 13. And there's Excel. Now when I click on it, it's going to launch the AppV version of the application here. This is basically running locally. Let's confirm that it is, in fact, running locally. So if I go to, yeah, there it is, Excel preview. And Excel.exe, I believe, is running locally. But let's go to the secure corporate laptop, which is the more interesting use case for us. On the secure corporate laptop, again, the app has been successfully installed. Same experience so far. By the way, let's make sure that it actually, yeah, it is in the start menu under Office 2013. But let's click on this. So here's the difference. It's actually launching Citrix Receiver because we have configured XenApp to be the most appropriate deployment type for this machine. So this application obviously looks and feels like it's running locally, but it's actually running in the data center. I want to take this one step further. I have configured file type association for Excel, just like I did for PowerPoint. So if I go to My Documents and I double-click on an Excel spreadsheet, it's actually using the Citrix version of Excel to open up the application. So I have balance sheet, expense report. Let me go ahead and close the expense report for a second. Oh, I maximized it. You know what? Let me set the display to duplicate so I can see what's going on my machine. Okay, let's just, oops. Nope. You know what, let me just set that back to extend. All right, that's better. So I can see what's going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and, oops, there, I'll go ahead and close this expense report. So let's say I'm on my secure corporate laptop. I'm still in the office, and I'm doing some work here. It's time for me to go home. I go home and I bring up my iPad. I want to continue working from home. So let me show you, if everything goes well here, I'll be able to show you the experience on an iPad. Make sure that we're still connected. Let me make sure I'm still connected to the wireless. Nope. Okay, there it is, Citrix 13. I have a little wireless router here.
Attention please. The alarm you have just heard is part of the hotel's early alert system. The reason for the alarm is now being investigated. We will keep you advised. Thank you. May I have your attention please? The alarm you heard was caused by a minor incident. The situation has been taken care of. We apologize for any inconvenience. Thank you.
All right. So.
May I have your attention please? The alarm you heard was caused by a minor incident. The situation has been taken care of. We apologize for any inconvenience. Thank you.
Okay. I have a wireless router here, but I'm having problems connecting to the wireless router at this point. It says it's unable to join this network here. So what I'll do is we're going to be at the booth, as some of you have come to the booth already. So we'll look at the iPad demo in the booth. I'm hoping I can get it working. But let me at least bring up Citrix receiver so you kind of know what I'm talking about. 5. Oops. Hold on. Oh, that's right. I'm not connected to the wireless, so I can't show you what's going on here. But anyways, come to the Citrix booth. We'll look at. There's a Citrix receiver for the iPad. It's not much of a demo here, but the receiver has a broad footprint on all these kinds of devices. So stop by there, and we'll look at what the experience looks like. But what you'll see is when I open up Citrix receiver, when I log into Citrix receiver on the iPad, it's going to smooth roam this session onto the iPad. So it's going to literally steal that session and bring it in here, because remember the session is still running on the server. So it's going to smooth roam that. That's called workspace control, and you can basically continue working on your iPad while you're watching TV. So that brings us to the end of the XenApp connector demo. Any questions?
Is it safe to say that when you're running that published application to SCCM, it's actually using what, PowerShell hooked into the database to actually create published applications on that?
Sorry. Say. Correct. So when you configure applications in the SCCM console that have a XenApp deployment type, the XenApp connector service talks to the XenApp SDK that's hosted on the XenApp controller, not on the workers, but on the controller, and then goes ahead and publishes the application. But yeah, it uses, it actually talks at a slightly lower layer than PowerShell, so it's more of a first class. It's basically a C# module. So it's not just a bunch of scripts like it was back in the previous version of the connector. This is more of an integrated, more sort of robust architecture. I'll take one more and then I'll hand it over to Bogdan.
So when the user requests the application from the portal,
Yeah.
does the Citrix receiver get installed with it, or you have to install it ahead?
Yeah, okay, that's a very good question. When you select an application, the application catalog, and you hit install, and if it turns out that it's a XenApp deployment type, does it actually install Citrix receiver if receiver isn't installed? The answer is no. You have to have receiver installed already and configured in single sign-on mode using pass-through authentication. But having said that, you can even do this for AppV. You can set dependencies for deployment types to say if for the AppV, for an application that has an AppV deployment type, you can make the AppV client as a dependency. So in that case, it'll first go ahead and install the client. But for that to happen, you have to configure Citrix Receiver as an application in SCCM with the right kinds of command line parameters that does a single sign-on. But it is possible to do it. Okay, obviously I'll be around for the rest of the day. We'll be in the booth as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at any time. I'll hand it over to Bogdan Veer from Comtrade, who's going to talk about the SCOM management packs for monitoring XenApp and XenDesktop. So let's see.
Thank you, Prasanna. So, as Prasanna already introduced me, I'm Bogdan Veer from Comtrade, and we are going to spend next 20 minutes talking about how you can connect Citrix with Operations Manager. In other words, how you can deliver efficient monitoring and management of Citrix using Comtrade management packs for Citrix. So a few words about Comtrade. We are based out of Ljubljana, Slovenia, a fairly large company in the region, one of the largest software houses there. And we're more than 1,000 engineers, actually. We've been actually developing Citrix monitoring technology for over 10 years already. We started in 2002, and actually that was when I started also working on these projects. Anybody still remembers MetaFrame XP 1.0? All right, so I'm not the only dinosaur here. So this is when we started, right, with Citrix MetaFrame XP 1.0, and since we are now at 6.5, you see that's a lot of time in between. So, of course, Citrix noticed our good work, and actually last year we have been kind of promoted to a status of a featured partner, Citrix featured partner. That means that we are kind of in a group of 20-plus partners in the world that have this special relationship with Citrix. And you can read more about that on citrix.com/comtrade. Now, Citrix and Microsoft, as was already mentioned in the beginning, also work closely together to deliver next-generation desktop virtualization, which the architecture is based on Citrix XenDesktop and Microsoft System Center 2012. So also Comtrade is part of that initiative. As you can see on the bottom, we are covering this Operations Manager integration piece. So a quick overview across what we call Citrix Management Pack Suite. We have a number of capabilities that allow you to monitor different Citrix components. Now, starting with XenDesktop, XenApp, provisioning services, web interface, as well as XenServer. So these are the management packs for Citrix that exist today. You can download, install, try them out, and see how they work for you. Now, we are just about, in the next 2 months, to release 2 additional management packs. First is the Cloud Portal Services Manager. And this management pack is really, the product itself is more for service providers. And the next one is the NetScaler management pack. And this is, of course, a very, very popular network appliance being widely used around the world. Now, of course, first we need to ask ourselves, why are we doing this, right? Why do we monitor? At the end, we really want end users to have all the time great user experience, right? And Citrix technology definitely enables that. And of course, it's always also good to have then the Citrix, Citrix deployment monitored so that you can quickly detect if things maybe go wrong. So in order to kind of achieve that, it's also good to understand how the end users actually interact with the Citrix, right? So just to go quickly through that, typically the end users, what is the first step? Either launch a web browser or a Citrix receiver. These are 2 ways how you can actually get into the Citrix, and then, of course, you get also authenticated, either through single sign-on or by explicitly providing credentials. So these are all options, right? So this actually involves going through NetScaler, to the web interface, to XenApp, XenDesktop controllers. Now, once you authenticate it, you are provided back with a list of apps or desktops that you are allowed to launch, right? So this is the next phase of this process. And, of course, then you would want to launch something, use this application or a desktop. So you do that, and this will trigger then a Citrix receiver taking over the session, connecting into the data center through the NetScalers and to connect directly to VDIs or to published applications on XenApp, right? And also other Citrix infrastructure gets involved, like provisioning services and so on. Now, after you're kind of successfully connected, you would want to do some work, right? And this is when you use the desktop or application. And this is where end-user experience is then important, right? So you need to have really very fluent motion refreshes and responsiveness to make you productive. And of course, at the end, you would close, and this is the end of end-users interaction. So we see that actually Citrix, accessing applications and desktop through Citrix is a very straightforward, seamless user experience. But of course, on the back end, there is IT guys who need to make sure, right, that all these components that you have deployed to deliver these applications and desktops, that they interact the way they should, right? So this is where our job is, right, to make things work on the right side of this picture. So I will now go through these components that are involved into this typical Citrix deployment, starting with NetScaler, right? NetScaler can be virtual or physical appliance. As I said, it is really a network appliance. So, if it's physical, obviously, one of the first things you'd like to know is what is the hardware health, right? Fan speeds, temperatures, voltages, how the smart disk errors, so if there are any. So all these things are important. Then right after that is the OS, right? NetScaler obviously is running a special OS, and you'd want to know CPU consumption, memory utilization, disk utilization, and so on. After that, since it's a networking appliance, right, networking guys typically very much worry about effectiveness of the network communication. So are there any retransmissions going on? Are they excessive, right? So you want to address that and understand as well. Configurations, right? Management pack can actually track configurational changes. So if somebody changes some attribute, you can actually track and follow these changes also through the management pack. And of course, SSL VPN is very popular use of NetScaler as well. And certificates you can sometimes forget, they will expire, and it's not a very healthy thing. So actually, management pack can remind you that it's time to renew, right? So moving to the next component, right? Once you get to the NetScaler, you hit the web interface. And this is really the first component that kind of authenticates you so that it can determine whether, and what you can actually access. And as this is, the web front end, you need to be authenticated. So if authentications don't work well, management pack will alert you. Or if they are slow, right, all these things are problematic. And because web interface is fairly dummy component, it heavily relies on the backend, Xen desktop, Xen app servers to actually carry out its work, right? So this interaction is also being periodically checked by the management pack to enable you proactively fixing issues before the end users would actually tell you there's a problem. Now then, Xen desktop controllers, these are very important servers in a deployment as they kind of orchestrate the whole desktop delivery activity, right? The end users get authenticated on them, they spin off the VDIs, they shut them down, actually really coordinate and orchestrate the whole desktop delivery process. And if you get any failed desktop registrations, or if you are lacking of ready desktops, these are the things that you should be aware, right? So that you can kind of react accordingly before, again, the end users are impacted. Also, because of it's a really important and overarching component, it needs to have connectivity to various other Citrix components like hosting infrastructure, a license server DB. So all that is also being checked by the management pack for Xen Desktop. Now we move on to ZenApp. ZenApp, as we know, is really a product that helps you virtualize and deliver applications to the end users, either directly to their desktops or to VDIs, right? So all these combinations are possible. So we are really talking about application delivery here. And before you can really, an end user can access such an application, they need to actually log into the target ZenApp server and actually establish a session there. So these logons, are a process that can sometimes go wrong. Profiles can be corrupted, logon scripts can hang. So all these things, Management Pack will watch for you and will let you know if there's a problem with that. After you are able to work with the app, right, what is the responsiveness? What are the round-trip times from the client to the server and back? Again, we can alert you on that and let you know if there is a potential problem there. Misbehaving applications, consuming lots of CPU memory, or simply connectivity to infrastructure, these are the things that are being also monitored. Then we switch to the desktop Zen server hosting, right? So hosting, if you happen to use Zen server, right, is it's a hypervisor that you typically want to understand CPU memory consumption of hosts, of virtual machines. How is that doing, right? You want to see and understand that. That's all available in a classical manner. And provisioning services. So we've heard today about provisioning services. It's really a product designed to help you manage your OS images and boot machines off of them, very often used with Zen Desktop and ZenApp. And since it's a streaming, right, of virtual disks, basically technology you mostly care about, whether the disks are actually available, whether the streaming infrastructure is healthy, and lack of device write cache, all these things become important. So as we have seen, actually, the management pack kind of covers all important parts of your Citrix deployment. And if you've listened carefully, the functionality really is of two kinds, right? We like to call it, first part is the infrastructure health monitoring, and the second part is really also understanding how end users perceive the Citrix environment, right? From the logons to the responsiveness and all these measurements that Management Pack does. So at the end, basically Management Packs make sure that all this information is consolidated in a single pane of glass in end-to-end fashion in System Center Ops Manager. So this is then enabling really the effective operations monitoring of the Citrix environment. So with that, I will switch to a demo. I will walk you through kind of how really the Management Packs look and feel. I'll just reconnect real quick so that we can. Okay. So we are running this demo environment in our data center, so we are connecting right back to Slovenia, and internet is obviously doing fine today, so that's good. Otherwise, I have a backup solution in my pocket, so no worries. So this is the operations manager, right? So all management packs that we deliver are compatible with 2012 and SP1, of course, and still also with 2007 R2. So what we are going to see is, a walkthrough through, all these management packs that we have discussed, starting with the Zen Desktop, then moving to Zen App and web interface. So all that is available as part of this product. So let me first begin with what we call a master Citrix health topology overview, right? So this is one location where we bring all health information across all management packs that we deliver in a single kind of pane of glass end-to-end view. And this is how it looks like, right? So So here you can see all these different elements connecting to this master Citrix node. So on the far left side, I hope you can see, it's a Citrix NetScaler management pack, then followed by Cloud Portal, provisioning services, web interface, Zen app, Zen desktop, and Zen server, right? So all of them delivering this master end-to-end view. So if, for example, you have a Citrix administrator who you would like to see that information, right? This is a great kind of screen to export to this guy so he can have all the time insight on a very high level what is generally the health of the environment. So I will quickly go through a couple of these management packs. I have to watch the time. I think we have 7 more minutes. So I'll spend 5 minutes walking through that, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A. So this is the Zen desktop environment, right? Zen desktop environments, when you set them up, they are made out of Zen desktop sites. So in my demo environment, I have a single Zen desktop site, and this site is controlled by 2 Zen desktop controllers, right? So these Zen desktop controllers actually kind of are provided, one can back up the other, so they kind of really cooperate nicely together, and make sure that the end users get this flawless experience. Now, each Zen desktop controller runs a number of services. You need to make sure they work, right? So you see these green check marks on all of the elements that were discovered. This means that this element is healthy, right? In this case, Zen desktop controller is healthy, but we want to understand what exactly it means to be healthy, right? What kind of checks are actually performed to ensure that this controller is healthy? And you can see that the management pack actually delivers a number of checks that make sure that your Zen desktop controller is running well, right? From connectivity to database, to connectivity to the neighboring Zen desktop controller, and other things that are related also to availability and configuration, right? So a lot of these capabilities there. So these are really extensive infrastructure checks, right? Making sure that all is working well. Then with Zen desktop, it's also one of the most important things are really desktop groups, right? So this is where you deliver virtual desktops to your end users. And we, of course, would go out and discover. By the way, this discovery is completely automatic, right? You don't have to configure anything. It will go out and discover your complete environment. So as you can see, I have 3 desktop groups, right? And one hypervisor, underlying hypervisor configured. What you can quickly check is really, obviously I'm having some issues with this particular desktop group, right? Launching a Health Explorer reveals, well, I'm having a problem with failed desktop registrations, right? So this is how quickly you can get to the root of the problem, right? So this is now currently happening. And the management pack also has built-in knowledge on how to address these issues, right? It kind of explains what is happening, what are potential causes, and also provides links to the knowledge-based articles that are available on the Citrix support website. So this is a real quick overview of the Zen app, Zen desktop. I'm going to jump to Zen app now to show you how the Zen app environment is actually discovered. So with Zen app, we are actually dealing with a slightly different architecture, right? We have obviously Zen app servers that are kind of made into zones, the so-called zone concept. And then you have also published applications that are available to end users. And these are important, right? So here is where we discover those. And we also discover their dependency on the underlying Zen app servers. So which Zen app servers do actually publish those, right? And as you can see, if we detect that there's an availability problem with the Zen app servers, we would actually, if, for example, both Zen app servers that deliver this published application are unavailable, we would also mark your application as unavailable. So if an end user would now come in, try to launch this app, it would not be possible, right? You actually are able then to also measure availability of your published applications that way. So there is also a lot of reporting functionality built in. I will go back to reporting because this sometimes takes a bit of time to load. Let me switch to the web interface first and then go back to the reports. The web interface is also an interesting management pack. So why is that? Basically, the web interface monitoring is implemented as a synthetic probe inside of the web interface management pack. Now, it's not an ordinary synthetic probe that you can do with HTTP, right, probe inside of Operations Manager. It is far more sophisticated, right, because it takes into account all the specifics of a Citrix deployment. For example, what it does, it completely understands the way how you have configured your web interface. So you have configured web interface site, and then on the back end, you have configured the farms or that this web interface connects to. And then you typically select a couple of servers that will act as XML brokers for this web interface. Now, this is all discovered here, right? So you can see exactly how it's configured. Even if you change configuration in Citrix, this will get updated, right? So it's always kept in sync. Now, this web interface will function as long as there's at least one of the brokers working, right? So our probe makes sure that it extensively checks all of the branches of this tree, if you like, every couple of minutes, right? So that you can understand, even if one of the brokers goes down, right, the end users are not yet impacted, but your full capacity is not there, right? You're running just on a single broker now, and if this one goes down, then it's a problem, right? So this is how you can really be proactive. Detect early, there's an issue, go and fix it, you restore full capacity, and nobody will even notice, right? This is the goal of monitoring. So this is what makes web interface a probe a little bit special. I think we are almost out of time, right? So I will wrap up here. Again, I would also invite you to join us at the booth. There are, tons of out-of-box great reports available with the product. I would like to invite you to join us there, and we can go through the reporting section there on site.
Yeah, by the way, I was also able to get the iPad working, so if you want to see Windows applications on an iPad, you can stop by here.
All right, so thanks to everybody being patient for our little fire alarm. We made it through. Again, we'll have the ability to show these demos and answer more questions in the booth when the expo hall is open today. Again, for more information, you can go to either citrixandmicrosoft.com, NextGen VDI, or citrix.com/comtrade. And of course, no session would be complete without asking you to fill in your surveys. Fabulous prizes awarded daily, and so you don't want to miss out on that. And this session, if you want to see it again in all its fire alarm glory, it'll be available like the others on Channel 9, msdn.com. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.